So the next stage is the maturation, and this is warehouse one of 3 or 4 now that we have at the distillery. We're constantly building more at the moment. But warehouse 1 is where we keep a lot of the casks which are kind of soon to be bottled. So Maca Bay casks, Saneg casks, a lot of the sort of finishing casks as well. And we'll normally find my dad lurking in here somewhere. So we'll go and see what he's up to. There he is. And we don't need to worry so much about the social distancing because I'm living with you at the moment, aren't I?
You
24 hours a day.
10 weeks. He's loved every minute of it.
It's flown by.
So I'm here in the warehouse. This is really where we keep a lot of the casks that we're going to use in upcoming vattings. And the cask down here is a sherry hogshead from 2015. And we tend to use more hogsheads in the vattings of Saneg because they're still relatively young, and the hogsheads give us a lot of impact early on, and that's what we're looking for with the Saneg, which is mainly Oloroso sherry cask matured. So I thought I'd just have a look to see this cask, how it's getting on. I'm hoping for something with quite a lot of colour and depth, and that gives that's what we're looking for in the Saneg vattings, which tend to be about 4, 5 and 6 years of age.
That's very dark.
So when you look at this is 5 years of age, matured in a fresh Oloroso hogshead, and we have these casks from Miguel Martin, and the impact some of these casks gives is unbelievable. And something that's only 5 years of age, what a lovely colour and depth, and on the nose it's already got some rich, spicy aromas which we're looking for in our Saneg. And Saneg is now a popular core range that we put out on a regular basis, and it's getting a little bit more age, but that'll take us time to get to where we want to be on this evolution of Saneg.
And how many casks do you normally per vatting, per batch? How many casks?
We vat together about 17 casks, and we have a combination of finishes, so bourbon finished in our Oloroso sherry cask.
Because obviously the Saneg is predominantly, it's about 70% sherry cask influence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some of that comes from the maturation, some of it comes from finishing.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And we use about 16 hogsheads and 1 butt.
And this is a hogshead.
And this is a hogshead. And these are the ones that give us that big impact. Whereas the butts over here are more balanced and take longer to mature and get that rich dark colour coming through. And so those who've recently taken delivery of our Lot Gorm, which is matured in butts, I believe the balance is a lot more, it's a lot better and rounder and softer, whereas the Saneg has a big hitting sherry influence, is what we're looking for when predominantly the whiskies are quite young.
Yeah. So this is a full maturation. This isn't one of the finishes.
No, this is full maturation, and
the colours.
The colour is stunning for something of only 5 years of age. But a lot of the colour comes through early on in maturation. When you first put the spirit into the cask, the colour impact comes through in the first 3 or 4 years. So I'm not surprised, but it's staggering because a lot of the first fill Oloroso sherry casks that we filled don't have necessarily this sort of rich colour at this age.
And what's it like? Any good?
It's delicious. I spend a lot of time in here, obviously.
Normally when people are annoying you. Yeah?
And this is full strength, and you don't get that spirit or alcohol burn. It's lovely and full and fruity, even you could argue that a few more years it would round it off a bit more, but this is delicious even at this young age.
And these are the hogsheads. I mean, they look a little bit older than some, in terms of this cask, but they tend to be slightly newer oak as well. So you get a little bit more oaky character coming through is that to do with the size of the cask compared to the butts? Or
I think a lot of that's the size, because there's more surface area contact with the liquid inside. And Oloroso sherry, it's a rich, and depending on how long we've had the bodegas had the Oloroso sherry in these casks and soaking up in the wood, it depend on how long the Oloroso sherry has been in these casks before they empty it and send them to us.
Yeah. So when's the next batch of Saneg due to be put
Well,
together?
I believe this will be destined for the next vatting. We're just in the process of putting another one together now for bottling. We do them in batches. We do 17 cask batches each time, and look, we try and get them as close as we can to be the same for the whole year, but they do vary a bit. And I know that in the last few months we've had a very rich, dark Sané, which is a lot darker than previous vattings. And that's to do with the casts that we get delivered, and they can vary a little bit. But we're delighted with the character. We try and keep them the same, but it's never going to be the same because each vatting is going to be slightly different.
But so there's a slight variation, but colour maybe doesn't tell the full story in terms of character, does it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that I think the problem we had when the really rich dark colour, I think there was comments we had about sort of what's going on with Sané. It was just really the cast that we got delivered on that particular batch, and that will change things to a degree. But actually on the palate, there wasn't a lot of difference. If you tasted them blind, the really rich dark colour and the ones that didn't quite have that same depth of colour, the variation wasn't huge. And the age profile will continue to get older, but that will take time to get where we want to with Sané.
So what else have you been looking at in here?
I carry my glasses around in my pocket, and that's one of the glasses that's just popped out of my pocket. I've got another one here, luckily.
we can sort that out later.
Push that aside. We'll sort that out later. I find it so much easier to carry the glasses around in my pocket. My pockets are full of glasses. So that's the Ola as a sherry cask, and now we're just going down here. I'd like to quickly have a look at an older bourbon, and I think this is getting exciting for us at Kilchoman because now we got some whiskies really of significant age. This is 14 years of age now, and it's taken us some time to get there. We're in our 15th year, but when you start opening casks of this age, then you really get all that character coming through, hopefully. So I'm obviously going to have to climb up here.
I can go up there.
Normally I get Robin to do this.
Catherine can hold the
mic.
mic.
I'm getting too old to climb up on top there. So James can climb up there.
Here, you can pass me
So I've always been a champion of dunnage warehousing. I believe that's the best way to mature our stock. But as you can imagine, as you get to sell more whiskey, this sort of system becomes more problematical to get cast down that you need to. And now I better shut up because he's making a lot of noise up there.
All right, no, it's shots.
I
think so.
Yeah, there we go. So I'm expecting this to have quite a lot of colour, fully matured in bourbon, and that colour should start to really come through now on these 14-year-old casks.
Your glass?
Yeah, in my pocket.
How many
I've still got two. So look, the colour there is beautiful for fully matured in bourbon.
You get a lot of the sort of citrus.
Yeah, I mean that colour to me is really coming on beautifully, and it really showcases the casks that we use for maturing in bourbon, and we buy all our first fill bourbon casks from Buffalo Trace Distiller, and we have done right from the start. That fortunately was a legacy of my consultant at the time, Jim Swan, who helped me hugely at the beginning of this project. And I think what is important about buying all your casks from one source means you get that consistency of character coming through. And we've been very fortunate with the casks that we received from Buffalo Trace. They're their select casks. They have a selection of different cask types that they sell, and we always go for their top selection, which tends to be between 4 and 5 years of age in terms of bourbon maturation, and then they empty them and send them over to us. And we're obviously now buying more and more. And to me, bourbon is the champion for us in terms of maturation. It's what we fill mainly because we know when it gets to full maturity like this cask has, with wonderful citrus and lemon notes, and the background you've got that soft peat smoke and salty character, really strong mouthfeel. It coats the mouth, and a lovely warm lingering finish. This will be at about 56% alcohol, and there's no alcohol burn whatsoever. Look, I always recommend people add a few drops of water because it just opens up the bouquet, but that is beautiful. And it was some of these casks that we used the festival release, and we're starting to do older releases. And it's great that we can now put out some, fully mature single casks. And to my mind, you won't get much better than Kilchoman matured in a bourbon at 14 years of age.
Yeah. You like this one then? Eh?
I do like that one.
It's got a star on it. Maybe that.
Someone's
tasted it previously.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of you have tasted some of our older releases and our single casks. And to my mind, with bourbons, there's no hiding place. Everything comes through. Sherries can tend to mask some of the distillery characteristics, and this certainly doesn't. And what I always get from the Kilchoman characteristics coming through on every single cask we fill, less so on some of the richer, darker styles of casks, but certainly on bourbon, that lemon and citrus note is always there, and that floral sweetness, which starts its journey at the spirit end, where our spirit is incredibly sweet and floral and clean, and then once it gets into cask, the influence from the cask really comes through in a big way.
Good. Do you want to keep that for later, or shall I put it back in the cask?
No, I wouldn't mind actually showing Robin that one, because Robin obviously helps a lot in the warehouse, selecting the cask that we're going to use in our vattings, and I'd like to show him this one because I think this is typical of where I like our whiskies to be going.
Good. And then, in terms of experimental casks, have we got something that we
I've been a great fan of full maturation in other cask types, and some casks that I haven't tried, and we've forgotten the bung and the.
Well, if you hold on to that.
Hold on to that. I've been a great fan of full maturation term for other experimental cask types, and I call them experimental because bourbon and sherry have always been tried and tested and worked brilliantly, but we're always looking at innovating and trying different cask types, and I think that's important. Finishing has been something that's been tried and tested by some very well-known distilleries, but I'm actually a fan of full maturation, and we managed to have put out releases of experimental casks at full maturation, and they've worked incredibly well, and I think our spirit character has lent it to work well in these cask types. And I haven't tried this particular cask here for some time. This is fully matured in Sauterne. It's only 3 years of age, so it's relatively young, but I haven't tried it since we filled these casks 3 years ago, and it's worth having a look. The Sauterne casks we filled in the past have always come from a company called Dias, which is stamped on the cask end here. And actually what's interesting about these other cask types is that it might work wonderfully well for the first batch of casks you buy, and then you go back and buy another batch, and it doesn't work in the same way. It might be slightly different. Now, when we released the Sauterne, fully matured Sauterne, I think it was 3 years ago, it really took quite a while to come around, and I think it was 6 or 7 years of age when we released it, and it was something I was pretty concerned about early on, and you'll see this colour actually is relatively light. It's still relatively light. You'd expect the colour to still come on, because when we did the last Sauterne release, it was quite a rich, sugary honey colour. This has still got a bit of way to go.
It was a little bit,
and I would say on the nose, it's still, there's some off notes, and we've had this issue last time we used Sauterne. They take longer to come around, whereas with Madeira and Port, which are much stronger, more spirity characteristics, they seem to come through a lot quicker. And white wine, I believe, they don't work quite so well, because they don't have the power and the alcohol content to really sort of bring them together really well. So, nosing this, there's off notes. To me, there's off notes. So this will take another 3 or 4 years, I think, of maturation.
This is the fresh cask.
Yeah, fresh Sauterne cask from the Bordeaux region, which is famous for sweet white wine, and people enjoy that, and especially the market in France. Sauterne is something they always love and enjoy, so we do very well with any Sauterne cask release we've done. We've done fully matured in Sauterne cask for 6 years, and then we did a Sauterne finish. Now, in my view, the Sauterne finish, so matured in bourbon cask for 5 or 6 years, and then finished as a Sauterne cask for 6 months, worked, I believe, but some people will argue that they prefer the fully matured Sauterne. I believe the finish worked better because you didn't have all that big hitting Sauterne sweetness to marry with the spirit. Because I would say this is where you have to have the patience. So this needs to be left for at least 3 years. Just come back to it and see how it's doing, because that's all over the place.
Yeah, well, we'll move on then, eh?
Okay, you're getting bored?
No, you're just going to tell everyone how bad it is for the next 5 minutes.
No, I'm not. I'm going to say this is where you have to have the patience. I've got a lot of patience. You obviously haven't. So we're moving on.
We'll move on. What?
I haven't got any more glasses.
Well,
anyway, we don't need that one. Yeah, that can go down there.
Kids.
Yeah.
Should we taste a sherry quickly?
I think it'd be interesting to...
a butt? Rather than...
Yeah, I think these to me are... and this is now 13 years of age, nearly, and should be showing really well. We used some of these casks in our recent Loch Gorm release, and I believe... Well...
Carry on.
No, I can't carry on because you're making so much noise. Oh, there we go. Broken the bung. He's obviously not very experienced at doing this. So we've used some of these casks. You need to swill that out because it has Sauterne in it. And I believe the Loch Gorm release that we've recently done with some of our 14-year-old and our 13-year-old butts in it was the best we've done. That's my own individual view. But, everybody has their different views, and I believe some people prefer the 18 and some the 19, and that's what you want, is people who prefer a big sherry influence, which I like a sherry influence, but I don't like it to dominate. So when you look at this colour, this is not as rich and powerful as the hogshead that we opened first, which is 5 years of age. This is 13 years of age, and the colour is not as rich. But it has it's more delicate on the nose, and less sherry influence. The sherry influence is all there, but it's integrated with the whiskey that's been maturing in it. Oh yeah, I mean that's really coming on beautifully.
This is a 2007.
We didn't select this cask, interestingly, for the recent release, and I didn't actually try this particular cask. But I would say there's still a bit of time to go for this to really be. There's a little bit of prickle on the back of the palate. Yeah. On the nose, it's got a beautifully rounded character. But another 2 or 3 years even, no problem at all with this, and that's great because we're looking to take some of our spirit out even further in terms of maturation. So I'm delighted with that. It's slightly different from the casks we used for Loch Gorm. Because I think they were a bit softer on the palate and didn't have that prickle on the back of the palate.
Nice. So a couple more years for this, a couple more years for the Sauterne.
No, Sauterne I think I believe for a few years, and see where we go. I think out of all the cask types that we've used, Sauterne has never been the one I found. It's the one I find most difficult to work with because you don't go to it and go, we'll leave that for another year and it'll really come rounded off. Nosing that, you go, that needs a lot longer than that. And so we'll have to see. In 2 or 3 years' time, we'll have to look at that again. But I'm actually interested to leave those for 4 or 5, 6 years and see where we are.
For another 4 or 5, 6 years?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll leave you to your...
No, you're not, because I thought we were going to look at a rum.
You're not done yet.
Huh? Oh, are you one?
No. We're going to taste as many as you like.
Okay, all right. Well, let's just taste the rum. I haven't tasted a rum one recently.
You take that and I'll get the...
Again, the rum casks are quite young. We only filled these 3 years ago, fully matured in rum from Trinidad. And again, it'd be interesting to see how this has worked. We've started to work more closely with Plantation Rum, who is Alexander Gabriel, who owns Cognac Ferrand, and they have a brand called Plantation. And work closely with distilleries in the Caribbean. This will need...
Yes,
yeah.
So this is...
So fully matured in Trinidadian rum. I don't know the actual distillery, and it's something that we're working more closely with distilleries from different countries, so we have more provenance and tradition, because I think it's about the provenance and where these casks came from that people are interested in. This is very light in colour, and I would suggest it needs a lot longer than 3 years, 4 years. It probably need another 5 or 6 years. I mean, that's ridiculously light. I mean, that's crazily light. So, you know, we find this in our casks, and when you look at the colour there, you'd say, you know, it's hardly been in a cask, but this has been in 3 years, so this is pretty disappointing to me. But this is what we find, and actually what's enjoyable about my job is working with different casks. You don't really know how they're going to come out, but, you know, now we've opened this, yeah. My first reaction to that, and look, I don't mind sharing this with people because I think it's important that people realise. So we actually bought these rum casks from the company that we've used a lot with our experimental casks, and we've done incredibly well with the Madeira casks we bought from them, the port casks that we bought from them, and then we asked them to source some rum casks because they'd worked so well in Madeira and port. But I would say I wouldn't be buying too many more rum casks from them because I think this hasn't really worked. This particular cask is, and I think we filled, these are all rum casks, I think we filled about 25 of these casks at the time in 2017. And I would say this would need another 10 or 15 years. But we'll have to look at it. We'll look at it fairly regularly.
Are you going to wait this out? Or
yeah, we'll wait it out.
Maybe my impatience is saying,
you're
move it on to a different cask.
No, I think you wouldn't say, no, that's not doing anything, we'll move it on now. Let's look at it in 3 years' time. Okay. And if we're not much further forward, then we move it into another cask. And it's something that we do in the warehouse. Some casks don't work as well as you'd want them to, and then you decant them out into other casks. Yeah. And we do that reasonably regularly. Robin will spend a bit of time looking at casks and bring samples to me, and then we'll decide what needs to be moved. We've moved some sherry butts that didn't work particularly well, and we moved them into first fill sherry butts, and they work better. And it's all about keeping an eye on your maturing stock all the time to see what's working. Yeah, that is.
Well, you've still got some of your bourbon there.
Yeah, no.
You can swirl your mouth out
so
with.
when you consider, you know, the colours just completely different, and I would expect that rum to have actually developed a lot more than that. I get a little bit of fainty character from the spirit. Sometimes of the stills, actually, I would say, and I don't mind sharing this, is the spirit's better than this. I'm not
sometimes if it doesn't work, it's almost at its lowest point after 2 or 3 years. If the cask isn't fresh, it just goes a bit funny.
But actually, interesting on the palate, you get a lot of that sort of ripe banana character coming through. Okay. So although I'm disappointed with the colour, the actual, on the palate, it's much better. Yeah. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see where we go. But when your initial knows it, you're slightly disappointed. You're not getting what you're expecting. But to me, Caribbean rum is sort of bananas and tropical fruit characteristics. And there is a bit of that coming through, but I would hope it would have been a bit further on than it is at the moment. But then this... one I've got in my other hand is staggeringly good, and I love it. It's great, fantastic.
Good. Excellent. Yeah. Well, thanks for taking some time out. You were obviously very busy in here. But yeah, we'll. Dad's going to go, and he will be open for the sort of Q&A after this. So if you have any questions at all, maybe it's relevant to the warehousing, maybe it's not. He's going to be live straight after we end this video, so comment or head to the live feed to ask questions.